Nothing could be normal in Mets land. And with no other team giving us any news out there, why not bring in Ryan Finkelstein to talk a little bit about their new manager, Buck Showalter? This is Locked On MLB.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. If you're watching on YouTube, you can just look right there. My lower third tells you that you can call me Sully. Thank you so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen, as we're available for free on all your favorite podcasting platforms and here on the YouTube. Now, today's date is the 22nd day of December. It is the second shortest day of the year. If you're behind in your shopping, wow! But I can tell you one team that is not behind in their shopping. It's the Mets, because they just bought themselves a manager. Okay, wasn't that a line from Rocky? Didn't Mickey say, "You need a manager"? Well, the Mets have got one, and not a bad one to boot. Now, scratch my nose and tell you that this show is available on Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. If you have a smart device, be sure to tell it to play Podcast Locked On MLB, or check out some of the other great shows on the Locked On Podcast Network, including Locked On Bets with your boy Q and expert analysis from Lee Sterling. Or how about this? Why not Locked On Mets with Ryan Finkelstein, who's been a frequent guest on this show, so frequent that he's coming on yet again right now. The presser just happened. Ryan, where are you? There you are. How you doing, man?
Doing good. Really good.
Well, look at this. Is I had Todd Radom on a couple of days ago, and we were talking a little bit about this hiring. It was the day it was announced. I think it was Saturday or Sunday it was announced.
Yeah.
And I think we both had I had positive thoughts about it. But you're a Met fan. Tell me a little bit about what you think about the fact that they've gone the complete polar opposite from their last two managers that they've had. Gone for a really experienced one.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing, right? If things weren't working, let's go for a change. And I mean, look, we knew that Buck Showalter was going to win the introductory press conference. That's what he's great at. He's great at talking to the media. Got a lot of good one-liners in there. Everyone was laughing, having a good time. But what he brings is legitimacy to this team. This is a team that's trying to win now, and you couldn't have found a better win now manager on the market than Buck Showalter.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at his career, I mean, I've already seen some of the knuckleheads on Twitter say, he's only had one team go to the ALCS, but Aaron Boone's done better than that. Just you want to give them a forearm shiver to the face, because he actually has a very similar career to Dusty Baker. When you think about it, Dusty Baker has jumped from team to team, and teams have won where he's landed. And the Yankees, lest we forget the revisionist history of George Steinbrenner, that the Yankees were a absolute mess and embarrassment when he was sent to his exile on Elba for trying to remember, folks, this is what Steinbrenner was. He was always a winner. He was trying to dig up dirt on Dave Winfield illegally. And for the second time in his career, he was suspended. And as what happened in all times in his career, when he was suspended, they built a great team. And he was suspended in the 70s. They built a great team. They were suspended in the early 90s. And Showalter and Stick Michael essentially laid down the groundwork of what became the great dynasty that Joe Torre inherited. And the Diamondbacks won the World Series with the groundwork that Buck Showalter laid down, because it was an expansion team. The Rangers got to within one Nelson Cruz timed leap from winning the World Series. And a lot of that was groundwork that Buck Showalter put down. And he got the Orioles to the ALCS for the first time since 1997. So those were not exactly robust franchises. The Diamondbacks didn't even exist. So I think this is a great signing for the Mets, in my humble opinion.
Absolutely. And I think the best part when it comes to this job for Buck is you don't think there's much building that's required after what the Mets just did this offseason. After they brought in Max Scherzer. Actually, one of the funny parts of the press conference is you're not allowed to say any of the players' names. And at one part, Buck was so good throughout the first, I'd say, 30 minutes of the press conference. And eventually he says Marte, Escobar, and then catches himself and basically just has to stop answering the question midway through. It was one of the highlights of the press conference. But this is a team that is built to win now, and Buck can come in and just try to bring up that winning culture, which obviously hasn't been there with the Mets the last couple of years.
It's so absurd that you're not allowed to say their name. It was like
Oh, it's ridiculous.
we're supposed to act like that. I mean, he's come in to manage players. I mean,
Yeah,
what are you going to talk about? You're gonna talk about Tiger King? What are you going to be talking about during this press conference here?
it's
Slightly dated
ridiculous.
reference, I realized by saying Tiger King. I was just trying to think of something on Netflix, and that's the
There's a
first thing.
season two. I think
All
a
right.
season two came out recently, so it's
Oh,
not that
really?
dated. Yeah, season two.
What the hell
I
else is there to talk about?
there you
Unless
go.
they found out that she really did feed her husband to the goddamn tigers,
I,
then what the heck are we talking about?
I think
And
that's what
speak
they tried to do.
and speaking of the Tigers, um, Scherzer was managed by Brad Ausmus. And I think I was maybe I had you on. I was talking about that. I thought Ausmus was because he worked with Epler with the Angels. I thought Ausmus was the front runner for the job. And the interesting thing is that Scherzer was managed by Ausmus and was basically nudges, who do you want to see be the manager? And he endorsed Showalter. Of course, Showalter has a good track record of bringing winning baseball to different franchises. But it was telling that the one manager that Scherzer did pitch for, he was not eager to bring there. And it's also telling that after 1 year of being managed by Brad Ausmus, he hightailed his butt to Washington. I think once Scherzer endorsed Showalter, that signed it. It was kind of like we've brought Scherzer in to bring a title to Queens. Who do you want? What do you want to make happy? Would you like a mimosa? What would you like to have? I mean, so would you like Showalter or Oswald? Oh, Showalter. The minute that happened, it was just written in stone that was going to be Showalter.
Yeah, I think when you are trying to entice a free agent like Max Scherzer and he asks you or you ask him which manager he wants, like you said, he goes Buck Showalter, you're not going to deny him of that. And obviously the Mets had to make this a process. They had to interview other candidates, but it always felt like it was going to be Buck Showalter's job. You also know that Steve Cohen is enamored by the big name. So I think Steve Cohen was already probably leaning Buck's way. And then when you get that from Scherzer, that's just more confirmation bias that yes, this is the right decision. The players want it, the owner wants it. So let's just go all in on Buck Showalter. And again, I think it was the right call.
It's interesting, and I'm going to make a strange parallel that's going on here. But you had two teams, and again, I'm not trying to pour any salt in the wound of what happened in the 2021 season with the Metropolitans, but you have two franchises that, for the bulk of the year, were in position to make the postseason in San Diego and the Mets, and both teams, as the Padres were a playoff team on Labor Day. They were one of the wild card teams on Labor Day, and the Mets were still in first place in August. And so, we're deep into the year, past the trade deadline, with those two teams in position, and they both finished sub 500, which gives you an idea of how they finished the season. And it's interesting that both of those teams brought in veteran managers who have not gone to the World Series, but have taken multiple teams to the postseason with a way of saying, all right, we're tired of getting inexperienced managers in here. We have both of those teams, San Diego and New York, have a core that can win now. And they're not effing around. They said, we want Melvin, we want Showalter. I thought Melvin may have gone to the Mets, but I think San Diego is a perfect fit for him. But I think this is a perfect fit for both of those managers. And part of me would love to see that be the NLCS next year, a Mets Padres NLCS.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun for sure to see the two fan bases, those two teams, a lot of young talent, a lot of big names. The managers, yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. And I think the interesting thing is everyone wants to point to Buck Showalter and the lack of success in the playoffs, but for me, the playoffs are always more of a crapshoot. You don't know what's going to really happen. It's you get there. That's the part that's the most important. And for the Mets, I mean, you're talking about a franchise that just hasn't been able to get to the playoffs. So if you're telling me that Buck Showalter is going to get you there, I'm gonna be okay with Max Scherzer, Jacob DeGrom, and Buck Showalter in any playoff series. Let's roll it out and see what happens.
Yeah, this is the since the 2000 World Series, the Mets have seen the postseason three times, and one of them was a one-game loss in the wild card.
Yeah,
Do I have that right? Yeah,
yeah.
it was
Giants. Yeah,
the Giants when they faced Bumgarner,
yep.
when he's the greatest wild card game performer of all time, two complete game shutouts, and then you had the called third strike as viewed by Donald Trump in the 2006 NLCS. And then, of course, you have the World Series in 2015. Yeah, this is a team that needs to get that. And, of course, the Padres have only seen one trip to the postseason since 2006. And that was, that was because they expanded the playoffs. And so these are two franchises that are, that have long suffering fan bases, and really I think would be, I mean, Padres fans, this would be the biggest event in the history of San Diego. But for Mets fans, uh my my dear cousin Dave is one of the biggest Met fans in the world, and even he wrote to me, I'm sick of 86. We have to win, if for no other reason than to talk about a team other than 86. So, and look at, I'm telling you something. If the Mets win the World Series in 2022, it is a surefire bet that they are going to be absolutely the most beloved team of a generation of Mets fans. And if you're going to make any bets, go to BetOnline, which is your number one spot for all your online bets. Head to the new website on the mobile device to sign up today. Receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Use promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus from basketball, football, NHL, boxing, UFC, right down to your favorite Las Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports, so don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, we are here with Locked On Mets Ryan Finkelstein, and I sense from you, and I know this is a dangerous thing to say to Mets fans, a tiny sense of cautious optimism moving forward into the 2022 season with this team.
Yeah, I think that's the cautious optimism is a good way to phrase it. You can win in any offseason. And I think we saw it last year. The Mets, they maybe were one of the winners of the offseason, getting Lindor, and then it didn't pan out. So I think that's the cautious aspect to it. But if I'm just looking at the team on paper and the additions that they've made by bringing in Starling Marte, Eduardo Escobar, Mark Canha, a lot of veteran bats in that lineup, having Max Scherzer, Jacob DeGrom, and Carlos Carrasco as the top of your rotation. I feel really good about that. The bullpen lost Aaron Loup, but other than that, it was a good bullpen last year. So out of the bullpens in two dire straits, and the Mets are likely to add more when we get on the other side of the lockout. So you look at all of that, you look at the veteran manager. It's the best I felt about the Mets going into a season in some time, but I'm always talking myself into the Mets every year. So again, that's where that cautious element is brought into play.
Now, it's interesting that the Mets do have some holes they still need to fill, as we witnessed with the Braves, who, I don't know if you know this, but they actually did wind up winning it. Um, they made some of the right moves down the stretch, especially when they lost Acuna, who looked like he was going to be the National League MVP. If you had told me at the midway point that the Braves were going to win the World Series in 2021 with the year Acuna was having, I said, "Oh my God, he must have run away with the MVP." So naturally, it was Soler and what's his name? The guy
Rosario.
Rosario. Thank you. Who they picked up mid-season as basically stopgaps, become the big postseason hero. Which is the other thing to remember about a team like this, is that they're going to go into this season. The team that's going to break, let's just all assume there's going to be a spring training and everything. The team that breaks camp may not really be the team that is playing at the end of the year. And so I think sometimes people get a little too nitpicky about stuff here in December and January, realizing that this is going to be an aggressive team that is going to pick the trees of folding teams, because it doesn't matter if it's not filled with real Mets or true Mets. Has to be a team that they push over, because there's a real opportunity to win over this city.
Yeah, and there's Steve Cohen in his introductory press conference when he bought the team. I mean, he pigeonholed himself in there. He said, I expect, or I would like to win a World Series in 3 to 5 years, and immediately put himself on the clock to accomplish that. And it's 1 year down on that plan. So there is some real stress to win right now, and that's what they've been doing this offseason. If you're trying to win now, you're trying to remove as many variables as you can. So you're bringing in veterans, and that goes along with the manager as well. So all this veteran experience coming together, you're hoping that the Mets will be in position. And like you said, at the trade deadline, even before the trade deadline, when you can pick up other pieces if you need an arm in the rotation or an arm in the bullpen or another bat in the lineup, I think the Mets are going to be aggressive doing that. I think that's maybe why they're going to hold off the trade market in the offseason and
Yeah.
address solely through free agency, so that farm system is as stocked as possible to make those moves if they have to throughout the year.
Well, I mean, let's go on. Well, they obviously, everyone remembers that they picked up Scherzer.
Yeah.
They also brought in Marte. They brought in Escobar, and they brought in Kana. And I mean, every one of those players are, they're all veterans, and so they could potentially all break down. DeGrom could break down. Scherzer could break down. These are all things that could potentially happen, or it could be like a Clint Eastwood film, and they have one more good year left in them. And that's Scherzer is definitely the Clint Eastwood character in this particular. Come on, do you have one more ring left in you? And I told you I was going to retire. You got to come out. We'll give you a 2-year deal for all the money, sure, but you got to bring in Showalter. That's a horrible Clint Eastwood. I do admit it, but this is a win now team, and I thought one of the lessons learned from what the Braves wound up doing when they wound up winning was they made sure there was a capable major leaguer at every spot, even if it wasn't a superstar. And I think, I've loved Marte on this team. I think Met fans are going to fall. I mean, A's fans fell in love with Marte in half a season, and they loved Kana. And was the other one they got was Escobar, who is a good player, a good versatile player who is one of those people who could, maybe be their answer to LeMahieu or Urshela on the squad. I think when you look around, you say, who's at this position? Who's at that position? You do the Abbott and Costello around the team, and every name you say is a major leaguer. I think that's a really good step for this Mets team to win. I don't think an easy division, because there's talent in the division. World Series champs are there. The team with the MVP is there. But I think this is a winnable division that the Mets are just pushing their chips to the center of the table.
Yeah, I think it is for sure. Like you said, there is going to be a lot of competition. I even look at a team like the Marlins, and I think they're going to be better than they were this year because they've added some veterans. They look like a team with obviously a great pitching staff. So the entire division has a lot of talent outside of the Nationals. It's not going to be a
It's weird,
cakewalk.
isn't it?
Yeah,
That's weird.
yeah.
That's
And
that the team that won the World Series in 2019 is the one team that you look at. Yeah,
it's Juan Soto, and that's it.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the Mets have a veteran team that is going to try to win now, and I think all those additions that we're mentioning are going to be so huge. And Starling Marte, I mean, coming into this offseason, I identified the one player I wanted most, and it was Starling Marte, because the Mets needed a lot of help in their outfield. Their outfield really disappointed this year. Conforto had a bad year. Brandon Nimmo once again with the injuries. Dominic Smith in left field had a really down year. Now you replace Dominic Smith and Conforto with Marte and Canna. I mean, two guys are going to get on base a ton. They're going to play really good defense.
Yeah.
I love the Mets outfield right now with Canna, Marte, and Nimmo. If Nimmo stays healthy, that's a really good group to hit in front of a Pete Alonso, where he should be able to rake a lot of RBIs as well.
Yeah, I mean, not that these guys are the kind of the speedsters and the jackrabbits of the Cardinals of the 1980s, but it almost is. They're almost putting together a team with like athletic, good players to get on base, be able to go first to third, and when Alonso comes up, it'll be a three-run homer. I mean, the way the Cardinals were designed because they were playing on AstroTurf, and they had, I think Willie McGee like stole like 70 bases and was third on the team. They just they were just Vince Coleman batted 230 and had 110 stolen bases. I mean, it was just everyone was just running top speed on that team and going first to third, and but there was a great emphasis, and they would have like Jack Clark in the middle of the lineup to hit the homer to be a three-run homer. Um, it's not exactly that with the Mets, but I feel there's a little bit of they're trying to get good, athletic, versatile players to be there, not necessarily to have a lineup filled with 30 home run hitters, but to have a bunch of guys who can hit into the gap, be first to third, and wait for Alonso to go jack one out when it's his turn to come up.
Well, there was so many times last year where the Mets were, one of, if not the worst team in baseball when it came to hitting with runners in scoring position. And I think the one thing that veteran experience brings is it brings guys that can, hit the sacrifice fly when there's one out and a man on third. And, even having Robinson Cano back, as much as everyone's going to point at the contract, when it's Steve Cohen's team and the contract doesn't matter as much, and
Yeah.
he's just a DH and a bat off your bench, I mean, he brings a bat that I think will help the Mets in those situations as well. So I look at the roster as a whole and so much veteran experience that you would expect that the lineup wouldn't go through the same lows they went through this past season.
Well, look, before we get on about the rest of it, I do want to point out something here that we need. The Mets are getting a nice little boost of energy from these veterans that are picking up. And I think it would be a great pick me up for the team. Kind of like a Built Bar. Now, look at Built Bars remain the best tasting protein bars out there. And this holiday season, grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, or even better than a candy bar. Built Bar, filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with decadent flavor, covered in chocolate, but with amazingly low in calories, net carbs, and fat, high in protein. You get the best of both worlds. Delicious and healthy. You got so many flavors. You got mint brownie, cherry, double chocolate, cookies and cream, peanut butter brownie. My personal favorite is raspberry. Now, do you love your marshmallowy treats? You want to go dunk something in your cocoa? Grab yourself a Built Bar and look for some of those marshmallowy treats around the holidays. You get your hands on the Built Bar Puffs. They're light, they're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, through and through. Different flavors, all covered in chocolate. Taste so good you won't believe it. They're filled with protein. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. That's 15% off at Built.com. We're here with Ryan Finkelstein. I was so rude. I didn't even ask you what your favorite Built Bar flavor was.
Cookies and cream is my personal favorite.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's a good one. I point out I love the tangy raspberry, almost like jelly. With I love that. It's a great chocolate in that, and the cookies and cream is great, and the mint brownie. We're done shelling Built Bars right now. There's no copy we're reading right now. This is how much we love Built Bar, is that
That's
it's
right.
spilled over to the actual show. Keep sending them. Keep sending them.
Yeah, that's right.
Keep sending them. And also, if Mercedes wants to sponsor the show, you can send me one of those too.
Yeah, I'll take one as well. Sure.
And a three-bedroom condo on Russian Hill in San Francisco would be great. And be happy to use promo code Locked On. So you brought up an interesting, I guess, mind game on your recent episode of Locked On Mets because of you know Lindor did not have a eye-opening first season with the Mets, and which of course means he's a bum. It's Bayer all over again. He stinks. Well, maybe he just didn't have the best first year. And you made a great point on the show that Lindor did have a down year. There's no getting around that. But he is a superlative talent, and most teams, with very few exceptions, if you had a chance to trade our shortstop for Lindor, most teams would jump at that based upon what he actually brings to the table, and to not judge a man's ability just because he didn't have the best first year in the in the in Queens, and and of course there was some of the other stuff that had happened, like the the booing stuff and everything. But you may talk a little bit about the fact that even though he didn't have a great first year with the Mets, uh, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater here.
Yeah, I think people are really overreacting, and as someone who watched Lindor play every day, I think that what we saw this season is the first 2 months, it was a player dealing with a $341 million contract, the burden of that. You met with Steve Cohen, you had dinner, he gave you this huge check. Now you got to go play in a new place for the first time in your career in New York City, and they're booing you in game 2, and it really weighed on him. But if you go from June on, he was a lot closer to the player that he's been than what people are perceiving him to be now. He hit 16 home runs from June on. If you take the 79 game sample from June on, he was a 30 home run shortstop with Gold Glove defense. I think any team would take that. And so I look at a player that has been the best shortstop in baseball since 2016, and I don't think it's a crazy take to say he might still be that. I know, Sully, you appreciate baseball history. You remember Carlos Beltran's first year at the Mets in 2005.
It was
He
no good.
was not same thing.
Yeah.
Literally, the numbers are almost eerily similar. And then 2006, he was fourth in MVP, put up some crazy numbers, if not for Ryan Howard, and 58 home runs. Who knows? It might have been an MVP year for Beltran, but he was so much better from that point on. And I think Beltran also had to adjust to the booze and playing in New York. And I think Lindor has a similar makeup, very similar career arcs as well, starting in the AL Central. So I think there could be a huge year for Lindor this season.
I would bring up even a more recent one, that when Bryce Harper signed the big long contract with Philadelphia, he didn't exactly light the world on fire, to the point where there were people this year chanting overrated when he came to the plate. He won the MVP this year. He
Exactly.
nearly single handedly got the Phillies into the postseason. This Phillies team, he nearly Sisyphus that team into the postseason. And so you can't always judge these contracts by the first year. I mean, A
Yeah.
Rod was booed like crazy his first year with the Yankees, to the point where like people were like, "Oh, it was such a terrible move for them." He won them two MVPs and
Yeah.
almost won the 2009 Series single handedly. Lest we forget, Reggie was almost booed out of town. He needed the he needed the Wild World Series to win over, because there was a lot of like, oh, he was New York is tough, and you will get some players who immediately make a gigantic impact the nanosecond they land, but not everybody's Mike Piazza. You know, Piazza, you know, came flourishing right in. Beloved Marlin came flourishing right into the Mets, and not everyone's going to be that. You
And,
know,
and and sometimes you have a UNS Cespedes who's great the first year and a half, and then falls off a cliff. So I look at Lindor, and it's a 10-year contract. I'm gonna judge it after year 4 a
yeah,
lot quicker than I'm gonna judge it after year 1.
yeah. I mean, it's crazy to write off a guy who was, a unique talent when he was playing for Cleveland. Now, I want to just say one last thing. You've watched more of the presser than me involving Showalter, but one thing that I think Showalter is going to bring to the table, and I know this is the sort of thing. It sounds like I'm talking intangibles and stuff like that, which everyone rolls their eyes at. But this is a guy who has experienced New York media, has experience being in a situation where he's clashing with ownership, clashing with the media, in very tough situations as managing. When the Yankees suddenly became relevant again under his watch, because people forget, between 89 and 92, they were irrelevant. They were not even a fact. It was assumed they were going to move to New Jersey, or maybe to the near the Jacob Javits Center, but there's no way they're going to stay in the Bronx. And because I used to go to lots of games then when I was at NYU. Believe me, there was a lot of room to put your jacket down here, put your feet up, and put your drink in the seat next to you. The foul ball goes into the stands. It's yours. Who else is going to get it? I mean, that was a Yankee game in 91, 92. So he's familiar with that. And when there was some of the stuff that was going, part of the job of managing New York seems to be as much deflecting some of the negative attention, negative press away from the players. I think that's one of the things that Torre was brilliant at when he was managing the Yankees. And Showalter may have been a better equipped person to deal when some of the stuff was unraveling and there was the booing back and the bias and all that stuff happening. He might be someone who could have cut some of that off at the pass
Yeah.
and take some of that negative attention away from the team. And you're also seeing someone who seems to be having fun with the New Yorkness, being back in New York, because he's already needling Garrett Cole. Talking about, didn't he say something like it looked like he was picking dandelions when he was pitched in the wild card game? He kind of slammed Garrett Cole already. So he's already kind of like throwing a Molotov cocktail at his former employer. And right there, that's taking some of the negative attention away from the players and sort of, throwing it on his very thick skin.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and it's not necessarily that Rojas can't be a good manager one day, but I mean, you can't buy the experience that Buck Showalter has, and particularly in this market, dealing with the media. When Lindor has the thumbs down controversy, Buck Showalter will be able to disarm everyone with a joke here and there, and try to push the attention away from that, and not let it carry over and be a storyline for multiple days and weeks. And I think there's so much that the Mets can draw from this experience. He was talking today about just how he's there to service the players, and he's there to build individual relationships with each player and see what each player needs from him. I don't think anyone is more equipped for that element of managing either. Just the personalities he's come across his long baseball career. I think he's going to be perfect to deal with all the big personalities that are surely going to be in that clubhouse this year.
Remember, he was the manager of the Rangers during the A-Rod lunacy. And if he could deal with that insanity, I think dealing with the Mets is going to be a walk in the park for him. I think it's an ideal. And again, you make it. I mean, look at Rojas. May very well be a fine manager. And he obviously comes from great baseball lineage, part of the Alu Rojas clan. And he just was someone, he was in an unfortunate situation. He was thrown into the midst when Beltran was suspended. So he knew he was not the first, second, third, or probably even eighth choice for the job. And he went into this season under the new ownership, probably thinking if he got off to a bad start, he would have been fired by Memorial Day. And
Yeah.
so there was a little bit of his managing for his life, and they were in first place until August. So he probably bought himself the rest of the year. But when the bottom fell out, I think everybody knew that he was all but gone. But look at I'd love to see the Mets do well. I'd love to see the Mets. I think it's always good for Todd Rader made the great point this weekend saying baseball is always a little more interesting when both New York teams are good, and Met fans desperately need something other than '86. I mean, my God. I mean, between '69 and '86, that seemed like a big gap. But let's go. Let's go. I mean, we've gotten too many books about '86. It's now, Tim Tuffle is writing a book, for God's sakes, or like, Ed Hearn being Carter's backup. I'm sure that every player that team's been written about to death. So there needs to be a new team written about to death. And I
Yeah.
hope and I hope you get to do it because it'd be good for your ratings.
It absolutely would be.
Yeah.
Those downloads are a little better when the Mets are winning.
Yeah. Exactly. Downloads are a little better when there's no lockout. Oh my God.
That too.
That's true. But hey, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to thank you for making Locked On MLB your first listen, as we're available on all your free podcasting platforms. Your second listen, do you know what that should be? That should be Locked On Mets with Ryan Finkelstein. Your third listen should be Locked On Bets with your boy Q and expert analysis from Lee Sterling, who's taking care of all your gambling needs. Hey, talking about Brian, I'm going to plug your show. Where can people find you, and where can people find uh, where to find your show?
You can find Locked On Mets wherever you get podcasts, and on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also follow the show at Locked On Mets.
All right, and as always, you can follow us at Locked On MLB Pod. Same handle for Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Getting together to talk about the new hire of the Mets manager Buck Showalter with Ryan Finkelstein of Locked On Mets. This has been Locked On MLB for the 22nd day of December 2021. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Let's go Mets, and you can call me Sully.